Man, the new Lil Durk paperwork just dropped, and I don't think it's looking great for the boy Smirkio, man. Okay, Durk all day on Twitter just released the new Durk files. The new Durk files just dropped. And it's a mixed bag, man. Some people are saying there's some really great stuff in this document. There's like 5 or 6 documents that just dropped. Some people are saying, hey, this is really great news for Durk. Apparently, they're not going to be using his X.com accounts, and they're also not going to be using his iCloud accounts, his accounts against him as evidence in the trial. People are saying this is great news. Durk's iCloud, all of Durk's messages aren't going to be included, but if you read between the lines, it actually seems like the feds might have a few tricks up their sleeves that they're going to be able to use to get all the evidence they need without even using those things. Okay, so look, I'm going to break it all down to you, all right? I've got the paperwork right here. All right, I've got all the paperwork here. Okay, I've lined it up. I've got the most interesting parts. So I'll just break it down to you very quickly, piece by piece, but just generally, just so you understand what this is all about, okay? All of this paperwork is all kind of part of the same thing that's all going on at one time, which is essentially the government. Government's doing a number of things here, okay? The government is basically responding to a number of Lil Durk's requests, things that he wasn't happy with, things that he's trying to have go his way at the trial. And the government are basically clapping back at all of these things, but they're also requesting to essentially seal some of their documents, seal some of the information in their response to this to kind of keep some of the facts and some of the kind of inside info, especially when it comes to witnesses, what you might call snitches or people that are maybe cooperating with the authorities in this case. They're trying to protect their sources. But if you ask me, what we're going to see in this paperwork is that there's a bunch of stuff that's redacted that kind of has you getting a little bit suspicious. It kind of makes you think, hang on a minute, if that's what you're redacting, whatever's redacted here must be some pretty serious stuff. Okay? So Durk basically filed a few different motions. He'd filed a motion to exclude evidence, a motion, Didi filed a motion to kind of sever his trial from Durk, as well as joining the petition for kind of Durk's motions to exclude evidence and to suppress certain pieces of evidence that he didn't want to be included. And the government are basically clapping back. They're saying sensitive information needs to be redacted to protect the witnesses and potential cooperators. And interestingly, on page 5 of this first document, it actually said that, the reason they need to do this is genuinely the witnesses' families' lives will be in danger if they're exposed. It says here, the government requests to leave to file these documents under seal. The above described documents discuss or contain identifying information of witnesses participating in the government's investigation. They might testify at trial, and their safety or their family's safety would be endangered by disclosing their identities. Sealing of the documents is desirable because the government believes public disclosure of the info may endanger the witnesses and or their family's safety, and it could cause others to attempt to intimidate the witnesses and or their family or dissuade the witnesses from cooperating with the government. Now, what's interesting about this, obviously we saw, in paperwork that came out a few days ago, there were reports that crazed OTF fans were calling the courthouse and threatening judges and threatening prosecutors. So, it's facts. Not only do you have to worry about OTF and this apparent gang of hitmen and demons and murder for hirers, allegedly, they're saying the crazed OTF fans are trying to intimidate the judges and, get in the way of the course of justice. So that's definitely not what we're going to have going on, okay? So look, I'm going to take you on to the next piece of paperwork, right? This is now number 56, I believe. Shout out to Durk all day. So essentially, this is a document that is basically opposing Durk's requests for dismissal on the basis of vagueness, the government's opposition to Durk's motion to dismiss for vagueness, or in the alternative for a bill of particulars. So the government are basically disputing Durk's claim that, the charges are kind of vague or that there's not enough specific information that they've given to prove that these charges are actually warranted in this case, but there's some really interesting stuff in this paperwork as well. Because apparently, according to the government, Durk is requesting information on what they actually have on him to prove that these charges are, really warranted for his behavior, saying the charges are vague. But the government basically says they don't have to show Durk how they will prove their case at trial. And they're basically saying, we've shown enough. We don't need to show you more at this stage. So it says here, in addition, defendants claim that they're entitled to know how the government will prove its case at trial is beyond the scope of a bill of particulars. Defendants are entitled to know the theory of the government's case, not the details of how it will prove its case at trial. They're saying the superseding indictment and the government's discovery materials provide more than sufficient notice to defendants of the charges they face and do not create any double jeopardy issues. They should deny the motion in full. All right. And now something I really wanted to just point out, okay, this has been said a bunch of times. I said myself, one of the biggest smoking guns that I've seen is the fact that Lil Durk actually flew to Los Angeles and he was in the city when the murder of Quando Rondo's cousin went down. I said that was crazy. That was a smoking gun. The fact he was even in LA just makes me think, bro, what the hell? You're moving sloppy as humanly possible. And some people, I see some fools on Reddit trying to say that didn't happen. He wasn't in LA. Where's the proof? Bro, it's in here. It's here. It says that he flew. All right. They flew there on the PJ. It says right here, all right, as those 5 co-conspirators traveled to Los Angeles, defendant Banks and Grant traveled on a private jet to the Los Angeles area, all right? Went to LA, is what it is. It's there, all right? People saying I'm lying? There you go. Durk was about. He was in the city while this happened. That's damning on its own. That's very damning on its own. If you'd have told me at the time, Durk was around when this happened, I would have said, what the hell? It's ridiculous. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is on page 12, it very specifically states that music opportunities were offered in exchange for the hit. Obviously, it's a murder for hire. Something has to be offered in exchange for the murder for that to be a murder for hire, obviously, right? And there's been all this debate about whether money changed hands or anything like that. And as they said, look, we don't have to tell you exactly how we're going to put our case together. We don't have to tell you everything at this stage, but you got to look very carefully at the wording here. It says, moreover, the superseding indictment provides ample further detail of which facilities of interstate commerce the co-conspirators used and what specific promise was made, defendant Banks' promise of a monetary reward or lucrative music opportunities with his rap label. They're making it very, very clear, all right? It says here, contrary to the defendant's contention, the statute plainly doesn't require an allegation as to the precise language a defendant used in making his promise or directing his co-conspirators to take certain actions. They're saying, look, we got the info, we got the intel, we got the work. He was offering money or lucrative music opportunities with OTF, the label, in exchange for harm coming to Quando Rondo. They're saying, we ain't got to tell you exactly how we know that, but that's what we got. They're making that very clear. That's not a good look for Durk. All right, that's not going to be good. Right? They got who knows what they're going to have, but they're saying we got something. We ain't got to show you what it is yet. We ain't got case law doesn't say we got to do that yet. But it seems to suggest that they have something that would suggest that he indeed did offer either money or music opportunities. I don't know how that could look. That could be a recorded conversation of him saying, hey, yo, look, it's 50,000 or a Durk verse, man. Get busy in the streets. Get rid of... I don't know what it's going to be, all right? But it could be that something akin to that. Hey, it's either a bag or a verse. You take your pick, but you got to make something happen. I don't know. Okay? So there's a little bit more... there's a little bit more here. Page 16, it kind of recaps Durk just requesting specific info from the state. It basically just says these are the exact things that Durk is looking to get information about. The language that Durk allegedly used to convey his offer for a bounty in exchange for the murder, the nature of the item of pecuniary value. Was it money or a music opportunity that he is alleged to have offered? When did this offer get made? And what was the language used and the circumstances regarding it being at Durk's direction? So it'll be interesting to find out what that is. Now, coming on to document 57, there wasn't too much crazy interesting stuff in this one. But on the last page, there was some stuff in here that I saw. Basically, it says the government can hand over witness statements. Basically, anytime they want. All right, they could hand up new witness statements. They could have whole new cooperators that have just joined, all the way leading up to trial and even during the trial. Okay, it basically says. Where is it? A court-imposed cut-off date for all JEGS materials 45 days before trial is an impractical deadline that would prevent the government from following leads in this case or responding to events that arise as trial approaches. So Durk's requesting, you need to get all of your information to be used 40 days before trial. We need all the info. I need to know everything you got on me. And they're basically saying, well, it's not really even possible. They're saying, indeed, the investigation in this matter continues. Agents continue to review materials seized as part of search warrants and follow up with any leads, including interviews with anticipated witnesses, some of which may not even be yet known to the government that could occur up to or even during trial. People could flip and snitch on him in the middle of the trial. So they're saying, bruh, you want 45 days for me to give you, bruh? We might give you 45 minutes notice that somebody's turned on you, man. We might be at the trial and we might give you 45 seconds, say, hey, we got fresh off the presses. The government will produce any such materials in a timely fashion once they are collected, created, consistent with its discovery obligations. So they're basically saying, hey, we'll let you know, but someone might flip on you at the last minute, and those are the breaks, buddy. Okay? So now we're on to the next document, okay, and what's really interesting in this one, okay, is, wait for this. My bad, this is document 59, okay? If you're locked in with Durk all day on Twitter, man, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can go and read these for yourself. I'm not the feds, you know, I didn't write this myself, all right? I didn't write up this affidavit, it ain't the Fulio trial, okay? But essentially, there's some interesting stuff on here, and it basically says that, interestingly, Lil Durk actually wanted to suppress evidence from his X.com and his iCloud account. But what we're going to hear basically after this later on in the document is that the government government is saying, hey, we ain't even going to use that. So don't worry about it. Trust me, we got other stuff on deck. So he says, defendant Banks moves to suppress evidence seized from 2 accounts pursuant to the federal search warrants. The X account, Lil Durk, and the Durkio at iCloud.com account. And you know what's funny? It's for some reason it's hyperlinked in this document. So if you want to shoot Durk an email to his federally seized account, you know what I mean? It's hyperlinked there. I could click that, and we could lock in. We could lock in and send Durk a little message of support to his email man, to the feds that are at least combing through that still currently, apparently. But basically, this kind of goes on to just kind of like shoot back at Durk's suggestions. And they basically just say it's kind of ridiculous to even claim that that song Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy was written before the murder, when the lyrics basically exactly describe the murder, and the feds will go on to say, bro, it doesn't even matter. Even if you wrote it before, it says you talking about you putting green lights on people and dropping bags on people, and bro, you basically showing your intent before. Fine, if you want to say it happened before, cool. What happened before? All right, you painted the whole picture before you went and did it, cool. It's not a good look, man. It says, in prior filings, defendant's motion focuses on rap lyrics contained in Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy. This is bad. Defendant does not dispute that he rapped those lyrics or that his lyrics are about greenlighting a murder of a rival. Instead, defendant asserts the lyrics were written 7 months before Savia Robinson's killing, and thus the government's mere inclusion of the lyrics in a search warrant amounts to a material falsity requiring a Franks hearing. This argument's meritless for several reasons. It says, first, defendant has failed to identify any false statement or information actually contained in the affidavit. Apparently recognizing this, defendant attempts to manufacture a misrepresentation by citing to an allegation about the lyrics contained in a prior non-operative iteration of the indictment. Now, if you saw my video about the Fulio case earlier on today, okay, Durk's legal team tried to pull a little finesse, okay, because basically the feds filed the wrong version of the song. They filed a fan-made edit that had the Quando Rondo No sound effect put in the background. All right. And then basically they're now trying, Durk's team are on some slick stuff. They're trying to say, oh my God, you're just taking fan-made any stuff from online and trying to make it look like Durk said it. But then now the feds are clapping back saying, we're looking at the lyrics. Forget the ad-lib. Forget the edited audio. That we've made a superseding indictment that doesn't even include that version of it. So don't even worry about it. But also, if that's your argument, that it's a fan-downloaded version because it's got one ad-lib of Quando screaming no in it, and you're not disputing the fact that this is a song about greenlighting murders, they're basically saying the fact that the defense aren't even questioning the lyrics basically proves that they're true, because he wouldn't even have the gall to say that they're not true. Saying that they were recorded 7 months before isn't saying that they're not true things that you do. And so this is a really, really bad look. Okay. Defendants failed to identify any false statement or information actually contained in the affidavit. Apparently recognizing this, they manufacture a misrepresentation, blah, blah, blah. And then asked the court to interpose falsity within the affidavit when there is none. All right, they're saying, you trying to say, oh, you use the fake version of it, but not relevant, okay? Because what's relevant is the lyrics, and you're not even disputing those. Other than the defendant's claim the warrants contain demonstrably false statements or omissions, the motion is devoid of evidence or facts that show the following. Okay, and it basically says here, the factual allegation is anything but true. And then this is from the original superseding indictment. It recounts those lyrics, which I'll read the glorious lyrics, because these lyrics do cook Durk. Doesn't matter when they were written, to be honest with you. December 2022, Durk was featured on Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy. Durk's raps, it's effed up, I'd rather get revenge instead of millions. Told me they got an Addy, go. Got location, go. Green light, go. It's a banger, go. Look on the news and see your son, you're screaming, no. There you go. And it says, following Savia Robinson's murder, a bystander video captured screaming no when he saw Savia Robinson's body pulled from the Escalade. Now, this is how you know the feds are super slick, because Durk can't really pull the whole, well, you used an ad-lib from a fan-made version of the song. I didn't put the no on there. Yeah, but you're rapping no, right? The bystander video captured. So now they're basically reclaiming that information and formatting it correctly so that Durk can't really say anything back in response to it. They slipped up putting the wrong version of the song. The Instagram fan made edit with the no in there. but they're bringing it back. They've tightened it up. This is a much more clean indictment, okay? So, basically, they're going to go on to talk about this whole recorded before thing being a bunch of caps. So it says, nothing about this allegation is false or misleading. Instead, defendant does not dispute that he was featured in the song or that it was released 4 months after Lil Pab's murder. Defendant doesn't dispute his song explicitly referenced seeking revenge over profits and greenlighting violence after learning the location of a rival. Just breaking down the whole song. Defendant doesn't dispute the lyrics are similar to a publicized video of the defendant's rival screaming "no, no" while watching the dead body be removed from the vehicle on the day of the murder. Nor can he. Simply put, these factual allegations are true, not false, as the defendant claims. He said, you guys are lying. All right. And they even clap back at this whole sound engineer. I kind of fucks with this because, I was saying the same thing. Which sounds like a whole bunch of nonsense. It says, defendant's omission theory similarly lacks merit. They're saying it lacks merit. They're saying it's cap. That's what I said. Citing to an affidavit from a sound engineer that defendant Banks filed earlier in this case. All right. And basically it says, it's just got a bunch of information basically just saying it's just ridiculous, right? It says, declaration was filed 7 months after the government got the warrants issued. Notably, the defendant failed to comply with the local rules in filing the motion to suppress, which requires a declaration on behalf of the defendant, setting forth all the facts then known upon which contended the motion should be granted. The defendant's lack of compliance, the government reserves the right to cross-examine the declarant in connection with the defendant's motion. And then it says the defendant asserts the affidavit recklessly or intentionally failed to state that the defendant wrote his lyrics before Savia Robinson's murder. But even assuming this is true, the government could not have purposefully or recklessly admitted a fact that it did not know. And we're going to see some redactions. It says, and the government's getting kind of sassy with it here, I'm not going to lie. It says, nor does defendant's repeated contention that the government was under some duty to contact the sound engineer before using the lyrics in, for example, pre-indictment federal search warrants that were filed under seal. They're basically saying, bro, Durk's saying, oh, you should have reached out to the sound engineer. You would have found out it was recorded 7 months earlier. They're saying, bro, we ain't under no duty to contact the sound engineer. Shut the hell up, bro. You said what you said. Doesn't matter when you recorded it. And it came out when it came out. We don't need to. It's not on us to run around getting a bunch of phony baloney stories from sound engineers. So, you know what I mean? That's not our job. And they're saying, look, they're roasting Durk here. It says, especially in a case where, as here, defendants already demonstrated his willingness to flee the country to escape accountability, the suggestion the government was required to close a covert federal investigation to one of the defendant's close associates is flatly wrong. So Durk's basically saying, oh, man, why didn't you just reach out to the sound engineer while you were secretly investigating me and just, you know what I mean? Like, the feds are just going to call up Durk's sound engineer and just be like, yo, bro, like, we're federally investigating Durk right now. Please don't tell him. But we just wanted to check in, like, when was Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy recorded? Because to us, looks like it was dropped 4 months after the murder and he's talking exactly about what happened. But, like, you want to provide just, like, a ridiculous alibi for him right now? Like, just out of nowhere, like, you want to do that? Bro, you're in fairyland. Like, Durk's just on another planet. Drew Findling getting the bag to pump this nonsense out. It's actually crazy. Okay, defendant cites no legal authority that the failure to contact the engineer for fear of compromising the investigation amounts to an intentional or reckless false statement by the agent. Okay, they're trying to basically say, yo, Durk, you're actually out of line making a false statement, or accusing our agent of making a false statement about when the song was released just because you got your sound engineer to sign some affidavit to basically say, nah, pinky promise that the song specifically detailing everything specifically about the murder and exactly what went down and what was screamed after the murder. Just trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. We recorded this before, man. Please, we recorded this before. I've got a file. I've got a screenshot of a file. Anyway, sorry, I'm going to stop roasting Durk. I'm getting too harsh. So it goes after him and the kind of messed up timeline here as well. It says, even if this standard was met, it isn't. It's so sassy, this one. It says, defendant's argument also fails because it hinges on the premise his lyrics are only relevant to the probable cause determination if he wrote them after the murder. Not so. Defendant's lyrics, i.e. admissions, about ordering a hit and seeking revenge show the defendant's modus operandi and corroborate CW1's account, confidential witness 1 account. And we're going to hear more about this fool soon. I think it's interesting that we're seeing it here because I feel like this is redacted elsewhere. It says it corroborates confidential witness 1's account that the defendant ordered and financed the LA murder as set forth in the affidavit. So they're basically saying this is the person who told us that Durk specifically ordered and financed the hit as set forth. So this is the person who was privy to the offer of music verses or money in exchange for hurting Quando Rondo. This is bad for Durk. This is very, very, very bad, okay? And this is it says a footnote number 4, but the whole thing's redacted, so you know it's something juicy about that confidential witness. It's something juicy about what they're willing to share about these specific things, about the ordering and financing of the murder. Very, 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 very bad stuff, okay? But here was a big revelation that a lot of people are talking about, okay? They're basically saying, yo, we're not planning to use the X.com and iCloud accounts that you're asking to suppress. And this is what not a lot of people are listening. I'm seeing a bunch of clowns posting it on Reddit saying, this is great news for Durk, man. They can't use these accounts. He's coming home, man. What evidence do they... Bro, what evidence... They can't use his X and his iCloud accounts? Like, what evidence do they even have on him? What evidence... Shitloads of evidence, people. All right, I just told you, CW1 is telling the feds that Durk ordered and financed the hit. They got loads, and there's more coming. Trust me, you're not going to believe what's coming at the end of this video. Okay, but it basically says, all right, the court can deny the defendant's motion on the merits. It need not do so here. It doesn't need to. They don't need to defend it because, as discussed further below, defendant has standing only to challenge the seizure of evidence from the 2 accounts that belong to him, the 2 accounts at issue, that's the iCloud and the X accounts, because the government doesn't even intend to introduce evidence seized from those accounts at trial. The government respectfully requests that the court deny the motion as moot. So they're saying, hey, deny that motion because we don't even need those accounts. So you're just wasting your time. How many billable hours did Drew Findling get out of that one? Oopsie-doo, whoop-de-doo. Okay, yeah, just spend a few $1 million with Drew Findling to just file a bunch of bullshit paperwork. That's a great use of bread, all right? But here is where the Reddit fools, all the people saying, bro, what evidence do they even have on Durk, man? Like, they haven't got, if they can't get his X.com account, like, they probably don't have anything on him at all. Especially, like, he probably wasn't even in Los Angeles when this happened. Unlucky, folks, because we're about to see a very hidden bombshell from the federales here, okay? All right. It basically says here, okay, the 4th Amendment, okay, the defendant's motion is moot when it comes to trying to protect these things, okay? It says the 4th Amendment guarantees the right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, or effects against unreasonable search and seizure, all right? You in your home, you got the right to privacy, all right, to be protected. It says the capacity to claim the protection of the 4th Amendment depends, ... suspense, upon whether the person who claims the protection has a legitimate expectation of privacy in the invaded place. Uh-oh. It is well settled that a defendant does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in someone else's email and or online account. This is bad. All right. This is bad. Co-conspirators and co-defendants have been sorry, that's not the right part. So they're talking about a whole bunch of rulings here, right? People basically couldn't have a privacy claim for Gmail accounts if they didn't officially belong to them, right? A person has no expectation of privacy in another person's email account. Oh no. Wait, so you're not going to use my X account or my iCloud account? But man, this is like, trust it, bruh. It says here the government has reviewed the evidence seized from the bank's X and iCloud accounts and determined that it will not seek to admit it in its case in chief any such evidence. Defendant has failed to submit a declaration alleging a possessory interest in the other iCloud accounts searched pursuant to the warrant at issue, nor can he because they do not belong to him. Let me tell you what just happened, okay? Durk said, oh, no, you can't. Please, just don't let them use my accounts. And the government have said, you know about these, like, this case law where, like, you got no expectation of privacy in someone. If you were using an inbox, we need to know who set these accounts up and who owns these accounts. And if you send in stuff outbound and other people are receiving them into their accounts, they got it in their account. Whether it's confidential witness, whether it's somebody else set up an account for you and it's up to them and they want to decide to give over the account that you're using. I let you drive my car. I want to hand it over to the feds to look at all the stuff that you've been doing in my car. You're cooked, brother. All right, you're cooked. They're saying, bruh, they're like, hey, don't worry about it. We've got other accounts, all right? Defendant has failed to submit a declaration. He's probably in a tight spot. If he was using someone else's iCloud account to plan hits, he's in a tight spot. Because he can't say, well, I own those accounts, so I wanted my expectation of privacy. Oh, you do you? Well, seems like you're doing hits with these accounts, and then maybe we want to file to include them. But someone else got the account who can hand it over to us, or you've been sending messages to somebody who's a confidential witness. But I don't need your version of those messages. We've got them over here. So, ouch. That's a rough one. So over here on page 8, there's a big chunk of redacted information. And once again, I think we don't know what this is. We can only speculate on what this is. But this is going to be stuff that's concealing the identities of confidential witnesses. It's going to be concealing the types of things that they're saying. I would assume that Durk and his lawyers are reading the unredacted versions of this and probably seeing some really, really bad stuff and sweating, thinking, oh, they telling them that? Oh, they got this person to flip? Oh, they're going to testify to this? This bad. It says the affidavit sets forth specific facts establishing Chicago-based hitmen traveled to Los Angeles to murder one of the defendant Banks' and OTF's rivals, and that defendant Banks ordered and financed the murder plot. Among the evidence referenced in the affidavit is information provided by redacted. Quite a long redacted section. A lot of information. Based on information from CW1 and open source reporting, the affidavit explains that defendant Banks placed a bounty on blah, blah, blah. And then there's another giant footnote here that's probably more background information about this hidden stuff. And it is this type of thing that's going to absolutely cook Durk. Now, what you're going to see on this next page is absolutely insane. I cannot believe that I saw this, okay? This page is absolutely wild, okay? Following the murder of OTF member Dave Von Bennett, aka King Von, the affidavit further disclosed that confidential witness 1 knew that defendant Banks placed other monetary bounties for the murder on people with whom defendant Banks was feuding, including 6 other individuals. He had 7 hits out at once. That's what they're saying. Confidential informant number 1 knew Durk was putting money on people's heads for the murder of people he was feuding, including 6 other individuals. He was trying to go for the King Von number. He was trying to go for 7 bodies. And I'm not playing around saying that. I've said it before in other videos. Lil Durk, when Von died, Durk wanted to become Von. I think when Von passed away, Durk wanted to surpass Von, not in a disrespectful way, but in a way of like, yo, it's my turn now. I got to put on for you. I got to bring that demonic energy just like you did. Now, the next part is very, very bad too. And not only does it prove that there's clearly a lot of telling going on, but there's also just so much sloppiness on Lil Durk's side that we're not even privy to. There's going to be even more sloppy moves coming out eventually once we actually know what's redacted behind this stuff. Okay, it says here the affidavit listed significant evidence corroborating CW1's account of Durk being involved in Lil Pam's murder. Specifically, according to Bank and Flight Records, an associate of Durk coordinated and paid for 5 of the co-conspirators to fly from Southern California to and from Southern California using the credit card linked to Banks and OTF. Big chunk of thing is redacted here, and I think where it's redacted is interesting because somewhere in between booking flights for the hitters and Durk's credit card being used for them, there's some big slip up in the middle of here that's redacted, all right? And this will probably be another bombshell. It will be another crazy, crazy, crazy incident, okay? And it will be... The light's extra bright today. It's kind of dazzling me a little bit. It's been a long day. Like, this is going to be just some other sloppy big thing that they've messed up. Some really dumb thing that they've done. It's right in the middle here. It's something to do with finances. Maybe it's ski masks on somebody's card. Maybe it's putting the rentals through someone's dumb's name. Or maybe it's him saying, you know, I purposefully, you know what I'm saying? It could be him saying, I purposely put the money on the card because I wasn't giving a fuck and I wanted Durk to get wrapped up. Who knows? Okay. And it says, this is another revelation. And just like the funding for the hitmen's flights, records also showed that Durk Banks' credit card was used to purchase the hitmen's hotel rooms for the night before the murder. Great. Great stuff, guys. Like, Hitmen of the Year, man. You're gonna book the hotels for the hit. You know, all fly to LA together. Oh no, let's split up. The rich ones and the mastermind, they'll fly to the LA on the private jet so we know who's in charge. Great. We'll fly everyone else out there. Yep, brilliant. Yeah, put them in a hotel the night before. Yep, great. Yeah, go do the hit. And then afterwards, yep, cool. Then we'll drop a tape in 4 months' time and all the hitters can be on the tape. And then they can get their verses in. And then we'll go down for murder for hire. Like, what is wrong with you guys, man? It's just so bad, okay? So... yeah, I just couldn't believe that. Okay, so look, now we're going to move on to the next document. All right, we're going to move on to document 60. And this is the last document, and this might be the most revealing document, if I'm honest, okay? This is revealing, but it's a sort of reverse revealing, because there's so much redacted stuff in here, but it's like the silence speaks louder than words in a lot of ways. And a lot of the redactions are very short, and it really makes you think, what the hell is going on here, right? DeAndre Wilson is DD, OTF DD, aka The Threat, right? You're regretting that nickname now. But he goes by The Threat. And there's something concealed here, right? This is a redacted statement. So it says here what's really interesting. Among other things, evidence proving these core allegations is necessary to explain why the LA murder was committed and the identity, roles, and relationships of each of the co-conspirators, including defendant Banks, who attempted to conceal his participation by acting through trusted intermediaries, the multiple, including defendant Wilson, redacted. Look how small the redaction is, though. Could that be CW1? But if that's CW1, why is CW1 not concealed in the earlier paperwork that we just looked at? And they were saying it's so important to conceal identity so that witnesses can't be hit. If you wanted me to guess, I reckon this says like CW2 or CW3. I think this is another person who we don't even know about yet. They ain't too worried about CW1. Yeah, they're redacting some of their statements, but they're saying CW1's a thing. This might be a CW. They're like, we don't even want people to know we got another CW, all right? Durk going to have to know. He's going to find out sooner or later. But they're like, yo, this is going to be hot. They're going to be trying to kill this person. They're going to be trying to track him down. They're going to be making phone calls. We've got to keep this a secret. So it could say CW2, could be a name that's short. But then usually in these paperworks, man, all of the names are introduced ahead of time. So could be a CW2, all right? So this basically goes on, okay, and it outlines all of the things that Durk wanted excluded, and I think we touched upon this briefly earlier. I'll go through it very, very quickly, but these are all the things, again, they're just reiterating and just going through, you know, each piece of paperwork is just corresponding to a different, clapping back at a different thing Durk's requested, and in this case, he's basically saying he wants all these things to be kept out, but the state is saying the court should reject the defendant's request to prevent the jury from hearing all of this probative evidence, which is critical to telling a coherent and accurate story about Lil Pab's murder. So Durk's basically saying all this stuff is irrelevant, please throw it out. And the state are basically saying, no, we need all of this because it tells the complete story of why you guys wanted to do this, all right? So these are the things he wanted thrown out. He wanted thrown out the evidence to Quando Rondo's associate, Lil Tim, shooting and killing King Von outside of the nightclub. Durk's basically saying that's got nothing to do with anything. Get rid of that. They're saying this evidence proves the motive. This is the motive. This is why you wanted to slide for Von. No. It's absolutely important. Durk wants them to throw out the fact that following Von's death, they had pressure from fans to slide for Von. Durk's trying to say that's not relevant. Government is saying this proves the motive and is inextricably intertwined with the charges. Bruh, you slid for Von. How are you going to get us to get rid of the evidence that people were saying slide for Von when you slid for Von? All right. Defendant Banks' statements on a podcast. This is the academics one, all right? Acknowledging the public pressure to slide for Von and admitting the pressure subsided after the LA murder. And then they got the quote there. And the state are basically saying this is a party admission. He's basically admitting this happened. You don't want him to say you don't want us to bring up slide for Von because it's irrelevant. Why are you bringing up slide for Von in interviews and saying, hey, they don't see that no more for some odd reason? Bro, you dumb as hell. Snitched on yourself. Look at this, man. For some odd reason, I just don't see them comments no more. For some odd reason. Yeah, for some odd reason. Now you're indicted for murder for hire. Bro, it's just, I can't have sympathy, man. I do actually have some sympathy because it was sad what happened and Durk's been through a lot. But at the end of the day, bro, you're just moving stupid. You're supposed to be an example for the next generation, man. You kind of let everyone down. But anyway, it says evidence related to OTF structure and defendant Banks' control over OTF members, including the text threads where he discussed violence targeting other people, which was that stuff where he said he wanted to slide on O-Block. It said the evidence is intertwined with the plan, the identity, the co-conspirators, the absence of mistake. You guys were on drills, basically, and so we're not throwing that out. The other thing is lyrics about placing bounties. They're saying, bro, it's party admission. You guys said you were placing bounties on people. Shut up. We're including that. And it says evidence showing a 2022 Chicago murder was motivated by money linked to defendant OTF and defendant Banks. And it's just saying this proves the identity, intent, plan, modus. This proves why you were doing this. So, like, don't play with me. Like, this is exactly why you lot were out there sliding and doing all of this. Like, this is exactly right. All of this is, you want us to exclude it because it's facts. That's what's going on. I'm sorry. Just got to wet my whistle, man, because I'm just going off at these fools, man. Now, this is really interesting. It basically says that the government deadline to actually file all of their evidence, they basically have a strict deadline, which I believe is November the 17th, 2025, if I'm not correct. Hang on, I might be on the wrong page. Yeah, it says here, the court-ordered deadline for the government to provide notice of its intent to introduce evidence is November the 17th. So we are going to probably have absolutely everything that at least the government aren't going to redact and show us by November the 17th, 2025. So within 3 weeks, we might know absolutely everything the government has on Lil Durk, apart from anybody else that might flip right up to literally the day of or during the trial. Okay, so that's huge. All right, so we actually have a date on it now. Now we got a huge redaction on page 17. Okay, we don't really know what this is about. It's so much that's been redacted that it's kind of hard to even get an inkling. But the context of it is basically saying defendant's contention that the motive evidence will create a mini trial is meritless. He's basically saying that all of the stuff for the motive, we're going to have a whole trial about whether you can include that. The state is saying, bruh, it's a load of baloney. The motive evidence is coextensive with the presentation of the government's case, including cooperating witness testimony. For example, and this is basically going to be, in my opinion, a huge explanation of motive evidence. This is going to be a huge explanation, probably from a confidential witness, basically saying, I don't know for sure. If I was going to guess, if you was to put a gun to my head, all right, and say, you got to guess what is in here, I would probably say this is like some extensive testimony from a witness basically saying, like, I was on the inside of OTF and I was basically getting it in the ear that we all need to slide for Von every day of the week. And we was actively trying to put plans into motion to slide for Von, because this is all about the motive evidence. So they're saying, oh, get rid of the lyrics, get rid of this, that, and the other. And the state is basically saying, bro, all of these little things, the motive evidence you're trying to throw out, that all works in tandem with this confidential witness is going to tell everything and give all the backstory to all of these things. Your songs are going to line up with what my man says. My man's going to break it down, and then we're going to play the song, and it's all going to come together. That's what they're saying that they're going to do. All right? We don't need to have you on camera with your face out, bait face, firing the gun into the guy to prove that you are behind this. That's what they're saying. It says the government reserves the right to decide how it will introduce trial evidence. However, the government notes that giant thing redacted. And again, I think this will be more stuff about the confidential witness. The government notes that maybe some information and the witness might go together. Maybe it won't. Then after that, it says, while the defendant asserts the Atlanta shooting involves a complicated officer involved. Oh, okay. No, I just clocked it. I've actually just clocked what's going on. This is all going to be a bunch of stuff about them sliding for Von and it all being about Von. And then basically here it says the government reserves the right as to how it will introduce the evidence. However, the government notes that something hidden. This is all going to be something about Von. It's going to be something to do with the witness knowing about all of their motives to want to slide for Von. And then what's really interesting here is it's basically saying that Durk is presenting the way that Von died in a completely, I don't want to say in a completely false manner, but he's basically whitewashing it to make it seem like, you know, Von, it was, he's trying to low-key push the narrative that Von was killed by the police, rather than Von got shot by Lil Tim for trying to punch up Quando Rondo, and then the cops jumped out, and because all of Von's homies had guns, all of Von's boys got shot up. He's trying to paint it like, oh, you know, it was a big fracas, and everyone was fighting, and the cops opened fire, and Von died. Oh, we weren't beefing. We weren't trying to slide for Von. That's a load of cap. But he's basically saying the defendant asserts the Atlanta shooting involves a complicated officer-involved shooting that resulted in 2 deaths and several others shot. The government does not intend to introduce facts that are relevant to the defendant's motive in this case. So they're basically saying we're introducing everything that's super relevant. You guys are basically trying to whitewash Von's death as something that it wasn't, because we know that Von got killed over the beef with Quando and then you were trying to slide for Von. Now, I would love to know if they're going to release any information that basically will show for the first time how the beef actually started. There's rumors of a woman. There's rumors of a young boy going back and forth with Von in the DMs. There's rumors of, you know, Quando going back and forth with Von in the DMs. I'd love to see it. Now, this might be I would say this is the second craziest thing in all of this paperwork after them saying that he had a total of 7 hits out, okay? And this is so serious, they've even redacted the title, okay? But look, I'm going to read between the lines and I know exactly what's going on here, okay? Because this is absolute insanity. Honestly, this is actually insane what you're about to see. So this section is making it official, man. It's made it official. I've talked about it at length. I was probably the first person to actually point this out. Okay, they tried to kill Quando Rondo in Waycross, Georgia on May 2021, and they're saying that Durk was behind the hit. Not only that, but it's saying that Durk and somebody else whose name is actually redacted in the title, but it's basically saying that Durk and this other person, it could be the same person that we're talking about, might have had information on the slide for Von situation. It's saying evidence that OTF members, including defendant Banks and Redacted, attempted to kill Quando Rondo in May 2021. Defendant also seeks to exclude evidence related to the May 2021 attempt by OTF members and associates to ambush and kill Quando Rondo at Georgia gas station. That is absolutely crazy. And the reason they're doing it is because in the superseding indictment, it charges the defendants with beginning on a date unknown and continuing to August 19th, 2022, stalking Quando Rondo and his entourage. So they're basically saying, yo, this stalking charge it doesn't just relate to the murder. It relates to you guys trying to kill him an entire year before this. So you guys were actually stalking them, and we don't even know when you started this. But realistically, it says date unknown. But we're saying this really kicked off with the Quando Rondo and King Von fight, where King Von died, and then you started stalking this guy and you tried to kill him once in May 2021. And there's another thing redacted here that's going to be interesting. It says, like the motive evidence, the government anticipates presenting this evidence in a streamlined way through, and this would be information of a confidential, I would say this would be like CW1 or CW2's sworn testimony in the courtroom. And again, another giant redaction that probably has more background information about what that was all about. But basically, they're going to tell a narrative of OTF members trying to kill Quando Rondo numerous times. Such evidence is clearly relevant, material, and admissible in this case. Defendant Banks and OTF's previous stalking and attempted murder of Quando Rondo, Taekwon Bowman, constitutes a part of the transaction that serves as a basis for the stalking charge. Testimony about Defendant Banks' associates' prior unsuccessful attempts to kill Quando Rondo at Durk's request explained both the nature and conspiratorial relationship, how and why the murder plot was set in the manner it was. So they're basically saying that they were trying to kill Quando on Durk's direction, and that all led up to the Lil Pab, and that's why the Lil Pab thing went the way it went, because they had tried to kill him before. They were moving in a certain way. It's crazy. Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh no. So basically, this is they're talking about, for a second when I see it said intertwined with arson and conspiracy charge, I was thinking, wait, did they try and burn Quando Rondo? Right, but they're talking about some other case law. But there's another interesting redaction here on page 19. It's basically redacted info. It's sort of basically saying that Durk's kind of Durk's basically trying to say his only connection to the murder is his connection with whatever this confidential informant is. Now, it's redacted, and the information about them is redacted too. It says defendant's primary contention for exclusion is that the only connection between this attempted murder and defendant Banks is blank. Now, what could this be? We don't know. This will be evidence that they're not willing to introduce. Now, we heard all these rumors that there was a group of black disciples out in Waycross, Georgia, that were tapped in with Lil Durk, and they ended up doing the hit on behalf of him, and there was a Facebook post that followed it up. I covered all of this before it was in paperwork. And who knows? Maybe that person's flipping on Durk. Maybe they got a situation going on, or maybe this is basically talking about, somebody tried to set that up. They're saying the only connection between them is it could be a Facebook post. We don't know what this is. It could be a person, could be a poke, could be anything. But they're basically saying, yo, it's sufficient. The evidence should be admitted. We want to include this. All right. And it's crazy. Okay. There's another redaction here that kind of doesn't make sense to me, but I don't want to read too much into it. But this is basically, we've already covered this stuff. It's about the thing where he says, Durk's texting out saying, I got them hunting you. A message he forwarded to other OTF members, including defendant Didi. And then there's a bunch of stuff redacted here. Now, we heard about this the other day, and the next redaction is interesting, right? Because it says, there was a text thread with Durk and a rival, and Durk told OTF members he was going to pipe it up, meaning grab a gun, and a voice memo was sent from somebody discussing OTF structure and defendant Banks' control over money and other OTF members. Now, what's weird is we'll just go to the next part. Okay, I'm not gonna go too hard on that. But all right, so there's this next part here which has got more redactions. And interestingly, it's not the first time that there's been a very suspect and short redaction after Didi's name, right? DeAndre Wilson, he's got Satin redacted right after him, and it says the government, there's a bunch of redacted stuff here at the bottom too. It says, as such, the government intends to introduce a text message thread from April 2023 in which defendant Banks sent his OTF conspirators, including defendant Wilson. I don't know what this is. That's such a short space. It could be ampersand CW1 or 2. Could be someone else's name. Could be something to do with Wilson. I don't even know, right? But it says he sent a screenshot of Banks taunting a rival saying, I've got you hunting right now. You better have 3 ski masks on. In response, OTF members warned defendant Banks to protect himself in light of the threat, saying if you talk to them blood on the DM, text them in vanish mode. Once again, that's showing cover-up conspiracy. It's not a good look. Materially, defendant Banks made it clear in this text thread that I got not an other OTF member has control over OTF associates that were hunting the rival. And it goes on to say, in a similar thread from the same month, defendant Banks and the OTF associates discussed defendant Banks' heated exchange with another rival member, with Banks telling his associates, I'm finna pipe it up. Common street reference to using firearms. In response, Durk's call for violence against rival gang. And then somebody agreed to follow Banks' lead, exclaiming, blood, it's green. emoji of a car and traffic light, green light, getting stuff together now, referring to a green light to act on defendant Banks' order. Now, I thought this was Booney Mo. From people saying the other day, I'm pretty sure this back and forth went around and people were saying that Booney Mo was at least part of that conversation. But there could well be other people, other confidential witnesses, and it sounds like Booney Mo was sliding with CW1. That's what they were saying. So maybe that's this person. Maybe it's their name. Maybe it's CW1. It's a suspiciously wide redaction. That's a bit wide for a CW1, but it could be a last name. Perhaps they were introduced earlier. But anyway, it says, getting stuff together now, no phones, referring to a green light to his order, and defendant Banks' associates did just that. The government anticipates something. And I would say that this probably is about to say that the government anticipates that one of the witnesses is going to testify that this order was acted upon and whatever they were referring to actually went down. I think that's what's going to be alleged there. So yeah, that's a bit sketchy, to be honest. All right. Regarding the pipe it up thread, the government expects that, and there's a big redacted chunk, and I think it's going to be the government expects that something will be sworn, put across as testimony in the courtroom. And it's just going to be an awful look for Durk, basically, is what that's going to end up being, right? There's a redacted footnote here on page 23 that talks about how the audio message was obtained. Again, I think this is going to be another interesting thing that will come out. It says, defendant Banks' modus operandi of funding his associates' criminality is further confirmed by a seized audio message from redacted. We don't know how that audio message came about. We don't know who gave it. We don't know who, but this is going to be more information. And then that's when he said the thing we saw the other day, where he said he explained people called Durk for money, gives out 500,000 to 600,000 to the streets, and funds the sliders. Okay, that's apparently what he's doing and funding the sliders, right? And then they used a bunch of lyrics. Okay, they start talking about the lyrics in Aha. And again, ironically, right, Durk was saying, oh, please don't talk about Slide for Von. Can we not admit any evidence talking about Slide for Von? And they're like, bro, you got it in your own lyrics, right? The government must be permitted to present Banks' own statements which dispel any ambiguity as to the meaning of sliding for Von. Smirk, slide, slide, slide. Don't respond to shit with Von. I'm like, F it, you tripping, go get your gun. They drop in locations, I'm getting it done. F tweeting, we sliding, the feds are coming. They said the feds are coming in the indictment. And the feds are here in the indictment. They got the Beverly Hills song there as well. All right, and I think they even say here in this footnote they're gonna put in lyrics from Dee Dee. The government reserves the right to introduce other co-conspirators' lyrics, including defendant Wilson, aka D-Ski. All right, so they're going to get that Loyal Bros playing in the courtroom, man, and it's about to be lit. It's going to be like the YSL trial all over again. So they also said that they got that song where he's talking about, I think it had a different name, but in this it was referred to as Scoom His Ass, and they've even got a YouTube link to it there. I might have to listen to that later just to run that one back. But this basically says that song was seized from a person's cell phone pursuant to a search warrant. Now, what's interesting here is the fact that it was seized via a search warrant makes me think, at least at the time that it was seized, maybe this person wasn't cooperating, maybe they're not a cooperator, maybe there's someone else. But it could be from a cooperator's cell phone pursuant to a search warrant. So it's all good for Durk to say, please don't use my X account, please don't use my iCloud. Yeah, cool, we got a search warrant for your boys' phones. We're getting songs from their phones that are unreleased officially from your guys, so we know it's a real song. Like, that is not a good look. Okay, on page 27, they mention the Stefan Mack murder as well. They talk about Durk promising or people basically expecting a payment from OTF following the murder of a well-known Chicago gang member, SM, which is Stefan Mack. There's also a big redaction here, which is really interesting. It says that Durk was kind of cover up his movements, right? It says, such evidence is particularly crucial in this case as the government expects the evidence at trial will show the defendants took significant steps to conceal their involvement in the LA murder, including by using encrypted communications and burner phones, and that defendant Banks used blank. As he's repeatedly done in his pleadings, he will undoubtedly argue that the failure to seize direct communications about the murder proves that he didn't participate in it. But basically, they're going to use it all against him. Now, I don't know what this is. I wonder if this is going to be Banks used things like Telegram, or maybe he used certain people. Maybe they're going to say CW1 was used as a message carrier, and that he's now spilling the beans. But yeah, this is just another crazy little insight. Maybe he was trying to use Telegram and Signal, and they don't want to put that out there. And there were more lyrics that would be introduced to the trial as well. Just all of this stuff. I got them hunting you up. I don't want the dudes you catch. I want the one I paid for. All right, I'm getting it done. F tweeting. We sliding. So they're throwing more lyrics. Bro, it's bad. It's bad, man. They're saying he had 7 hits out. They're saying he's responsible for the Waycross, Georgia shooting. I mean, I always thought that could have been a possibility, but damn, like, to really see it in paperwork like that. And they're saying they reserve the right to bring new witnesses during the trial, and that they could even put new murders on him, man. So they're saying, I think November 17th, when, you know, it's the deadline for the government to submit evidence. But from what we're seeing so far, every time something new comes out, man, it's more damning for Lil Durk. Very, very unfortunate, man. But I'll keep you updated if more paperwork drops, man. I'm losing my voice. I've been going hard the past few days. I'm about to go crazy, man. Look, all right, I might slow down on posting for a couple of days because I'm getting it in. All right, I got some good content lined up for you guys. So stay tuned. I'll be back with some more content soon. I'm gonna have my complex vlog soon as well. It's gonna be lit. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm out of here. Peace, gang. Later.